Well, oakley dokley, folks. Welcome to the Batcave Studios, aka my closet, for another extraordinary episode of Howard's Blend. I am your humble host, Howard Blend. So what are we going to talk about today? I put a blog post on my website, www.howardsblend.com. It's the one and only blog post at the moment. I'm actually considering making it a vlog. I don't know how that would work, but I'm assuming I can upload videos, but I don't know if it has to be a certain length or not. I'll look into it further, but I was considering doing a vlog instead of a blog, but we'll see. I do have one blog on the website, and that is called The Seed of the Supplement Company, which is the name of this episode. So essentially what we're going to be talking about is the seed being the seed of the supplement company, the seed being when the idea was planted in my brain, or as you'll soon find out, when I believe it was planted in my brain, because my memory is kind of going as I get older. So I'm doing the best I can. So kind of when the idea supposedly was planted in my brain, and then kind of what happened leading up to this point. So there's going to be a lot of years, probably around, I don't know, I don't even want to do the math, but a lot of years that are going to be skipped because it involves going into the illness that I have, where I weighed about 80 pounds for about 15 years. It wasn't just a straight 15 years. It's kind of jumping around there. I'm going to save that for another episode. So we're just going to try to keep it to the development of the supplement company idea and how it's evolving here. So in order to go into like when the idea was planted, the seed was planted, we're going to have to go back to about 1989. I was 13 years old. I was in junior high school, 7th grade, Apollo Junior High in Richardson, Texas. So anybody listening to this or watching this, Apollo Junior High, Richardson, Texas, if you went there, shout out to you guys and gals. So it was December, it was midterms, and in gym class, I remember the coach's name was Coach Bynum. He basically said, hey, as long as you peeps play basketball, volleyball, whatever, as long as you're active for the 2 hours of the exam time, I'm going to give you a perfect score. So at the time, I was a huge basketball fan, so I played basketball. And I proceeded to break both bones in my right leg on the ankle, around the ankle. Went up for a rebound, and several people came down on my leg. Even though I didn't complete the whole 2 hours, I still got a perfect score, because if anybody went all out to get that A or that perfect score for the midterms, it was me, because I broke my leg going all out. So the reason why I say this is after I recovered. So I wore a cast for 4 to 6 weeks, whatever. Took the cast off, went to the coach and said, hey, I didn't say hey, but I said, coach, I need to strengthen my leg, because now my right leg was about half the size of my left leg, and I'm not putting any weight on it for a month and a half. So the muscles atrophied. So he took me to the weight room, which at Apollo Junior High at that time, I have not been back at the school since I graduated. And so I graduated high school. I have no clue if it's changed, but they had the auditorium, and they put all the weights on the stage of the auditorium. So he took me, I believe, to the leg curl machine. He says, you need to do leg curls and standing toe raises, to strengthen the lower leg. He says, start lifting weights. That was the first time I've ever been exposed to lifting weights, dumbbells, barbells, etc. And I quickly fell in love with it. I remember my dad helped me to build basically a weight room in our garage. One half of the garage was like my little exercise area. He built me from 2x4s, like a standing calf raise machine. Y'all know, if you listen to the podcast, I'm really big into like trying to build big calves, and I think I developed decent calves. I'll get to that later when I develop decent calves. But I had I had the old weeder weight set with the weight bench and uh, the plates full of sand. Well, is anybody old school? They know the old weeder sand set. And I was also into boxing. Did some extensive boxing as well, and so I had like a punching bag, I had a speed bag, etc. So essentially, I got bitten by the weightlifting bug. So this was I forgot when the weight set was actually built in the garage, but I don't think it was that long after I broke my leg. I don't know. I can't remember. But that's when I got into weightlifting. So fast forward to about ninth, 10th grade, somewhere around there. So now I'm 16 years old or so. I got into bodybuilding. So essentially, I started the weightlifting to strengthen up my leg, but then I was like, hey, I'm getting a little bit stronger. Let me do bench press, rows, etc., presses. Now I'm getting more into bodybuilding. And this is what I talked about before on a previous episode of the podcast. I don't remember which one it was, where I would either stay up to the middle of the night if it was on the weekends, 2 a.m, or during the week, I would set the VCR. Shout out to anybody who knows what VCR video cassettes are, to record American Muscle on ESPN. And it was like their 30-minute show focused strictly on bodybuilding. I'd watch John Romano, who's now on RX Muscle, as he did his little in the kitchen making bodybuilding meals and stuff, where you could help you to lose weight or gain muscle depending on the recipe. You got good ideas from that. Watching all the up and comers, Sean Ray, Flex Wheeler. I love that show. I kind of think back and say, what did I do with all those video cassettes? Why did I get rid of those video cassettes? I would have loved to go back and watch them. I also recorded Lee Haney's championship workout, who was the 8-time Mr. Olympia, Lee Haney, and he would bring in people to work out with him for like 30 minutes. And, he'd always do one more for number one, and stimulate, don't annihilate was the stuff that he would say. So I was really into it. And the point of bringing this up is that because I was getting into bodybuilding, I was learning about nutrition. By no means was I an expert, not even an expert now. I was getting into nutrition. I was learning a little about supplements, even though at that time, I think really it was just Weeder from what I remember. And if you want to gain weight, you take the Mega Mass 4000, which was basically just powdered sugar. And I think Metrex came out like in the 90s. And that's when you could only buy it through mail order. You couldn't buy it like in stores. But essentially, I was getting into learning about nutrition. I was learning about exercise and how it affected me and everything. And I was into this bodybuilding. I wanted to build up my body and then eventually do shows. Never did a show because I got sick when I was 18 years old, which I said I'll save that for another episode. So setting all this up, saying, okay, from kind of an early age, from just right at the beginning of my teenage years, I got into exercise. And then as I went more into it, I got into more of the bodybuilding route, learning about nutrition and exercise. So now we fast forward to 2008. And again, as I mentioned in the outset, I'm skipping those years because that goes more into like when I was sick, and I'll save that for another time. So in 2008, it was the end of February, beginning of March 2008. My mom and I went to Columbus, Ohio to the Arnold Classic bodybuilding show. I think I was, 32 years old then, almost maybe a few months from being 33. She went with me because she was a collegiate power lifter. She was really into lifting weights. I think she stopped lifting weights maybe around 60 years old because just her arthritis got really, really bad. On a side note, like she is extremely strong, especially in the lower body, even to this day. And she told me before that the doctors, I think at like over 60 years old, the doctor said her bone density was like that of like a college football player. So she's had extremely dense bones. Fortunately, I don't think I didn't get that gene, so And I've talked about that before, but again, we'll bring it up in a later episode. But she went with me because she was kind of into it, and then she supported me at this time, trying to rebuild myself from being ill. So we go to the Arnold Classic, and anybody who ever went there, I guess, I don't know if they even had it because of the pandemic, but they have the show, which is like maybe 1 or 2 days, but then they have the expo, which is where they put all the supplement companies. Anybody who had a supplement company who was a supplement company went to this expo, because this is 2008, folks. So this is before, like, the gentleman in Austin who I love his YouTube channel and his podcast, Nick Bear. This is before Bear Performance Nutrition. This is before Ghost, the Ghost lifestyle. This is before, what's another one that comes to mind? I can't think of it. There's another one I'm thinking of, but like some of these very popular supplement companies now that have built like a niche in their market, taking advantage of social media. Because this is before we had Facebook, and I think maybe Twitter was around, but there was no Instagram at this time or anything like that. No LinkedIn, no TikTok, all that stuff like that. So, but anybody who was anybody went to this show. So there was Optimum Nutrition was there. They were they've been around for a long time. The big dog on the block was Muscle Tech, and I think there was Muscle Farm was there. Man, I was trying to remember. I have pictures. I've been trying to find the pictures that I took from so long ago. I have them somewhere, but when we moved, they're somewhere in storage. If I find them, I would definitely put them on social. But Muscle Tech was the big dog. So they have the shows. I think I went over this and didn't go into detail. So I think like Saturday night was the final. And this is, from what I always thought about it, was the Arnold Classic was like the second most important show to the Mr. Olympia, which is like the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. Whoever wins Mr. Olympia is the best in the world. But they had the expos in the Columbus Convention Center, and it was just this huge auditorium, and it was packed. It was the saying, it was butt to nut. I mean, you're literally like, I'm holding my arms in for people listening. It was hard to move, and they would throw T-shirts and supplements out into the crowd, and here I am at 80 pounds, and I'm like trying my best to push people out of the way to grab free stuff. But Muscle Tech was the big dog, and they had Dexter Jackson under contract. Got to meet him there. He would win Mr. Olympia that year. I met Jay Cutler, who was the Mr. Olympia at that time. Met him in the Muscle Tech booth. I met Branch Warren. I remember he was there with Muscle Tech, if I remember, but I met him before because he lives in Texas, and I met him at like the which is now the Europa. I think it was something else, but now it's Europa. It's been that way for a while, but this was a while ago. So I met him there in Texas. Let's see, who else did I meet? Lou Ferrigno was there. Let's see, going old school. Anybody remember Sergio Oliva? Competed with Arnold. I remember I even beat Arnold one year for Mr. Olympia, if I remember right. He was there. I got to meet him, and this was, unfortunately, maybe a few years before he passed. So rest in peace. But it was an honor to meet him. It's like, oh my gosh, Sergio Oliva. Who else was there? Greg Valentino, the man whose arms exploded, that documentary, and then he's also on RX Muscle. He was very, very humble man, like really, really cool guy. I walked right past Jose Canseco, the baseball player. Didn't even expect him to be there. I think he was under contract with one of the supplement companies. He walked right past me, and I was like, "You're Jose Canseco, can I take a picture?" And he seemed kind of PO'd when I first asked him. But after I talked to him for a second, and he realized that I was a baseball fan, that he said, "Yeah, sure, I'll take a picture." So he's very nice. Lee Priest, Mike O'Hearn, met all these people. Ronnie Coleman, met all these people. Had a great time. So the point of saying this is that here I am at this expo, and I'm seeing all these supplement companies, and then it just kind of, at that moment, it was like, now I have to say, from what I remember, okay, so This time, this 2008, I'll say this first. This is the oldest memory I have that I am sure of that I thought of starting the supplement company. This is when I believe, to the best of my memory, that the seed was planted. Like, I see these supplement companies like, okay, I'm not an expert at nutrition and supplements, but I think I know enough or I could find enough information in order to do it myself, in order to start this, create a company. I'm 99.999. So people in IT, 5 nines. I'm 99.999% sure that I had the idea of starting a supplement company before this. And that's why I kept saying to the best of my knowledge, but I remember don't remember for sure if before this I thought of doing it, but I believe I did. So I'm going with the earliest or the oldest memory I had when I know for sure I thought about it, and that was the 2008 Arnold Classic. So I believe that's when the seed, the idea for the supplement company was planted. Now, I'm not a botanist or whatever. I don't know a lot about plants, but I believe I know that when you plant a seed, you need to give it water to allow it to germinate. And then, the seed the roots will grow down further into the ground to get water, and then the plant will grow up out of the ground to get sunlight. Essentially, you need to feed that seed in order for it to grow and mature. I needed to feed the seed in my mind in order for it to grow. I needed to do the research. What would it take? Now, I can go on Instagram, look up a hashtag like supplement manufacturers and get a ton of supplement manufacturers. You Google supplement manufacturers, then all of a sudden in your Instagram feed, you're going to get advertisements for supplement manufacturers. They're a dime a dozen. Doesn't mean that they're bad. They're just everywhere now. 2008, it was hard to find a supplement manufacturer because it was kind of like they're few and far between. The industry was not as saturated as it is now. Or at least if it was saturated, I never heard of the company. So, I don't remember the names, but I'm pretty sure if I had a list of the supplement companies that were at the 2008 Arnold Classic, a lot of them are no longer in business. Or they're not the way they were. Maybe they're in a different market or something now, not specifically like a bodybuilding, fitness, whatever. They're maybe in a different market or something. But let's see where I wanted to go. I'm trying to remember what I wanted to say. Yeah, okay, it was the feeding the seed. So it was the ideas. I needed to do the research, the legwork to try to find something, to do the research on what supplement did I want to make? Do I want to make? I mean, even then, I don't even remember if pre-workouts were a huge deal as they are now. They had them, and I had a whole boatload of samples. That's another thing I'll bring up here in a second because I forgot to mention that. But I didn't feed it food in terms of water and sunlight, but I guess an analogy, make it complete, would be I didn't feed it the ideas. I didn't put in the effort for that seed to germinate and grow. Now, to go back to what I forgot, you don't see this anymore, all right? When I went to that Arnold Classic, I came back to Dallas with 4 full suitcases of free samples. They were giving out, no joke, like I think it was like a nitric oxide type product, enhanced nitric oxide, enhanced the pump. They were giving out complete bottles of it. Like when you go to GNC and you see, oh, here's product manufacturer X, and this is their product, their pump boosting product. You take it off the shelf and it's $60, whatever. The companies were handing out these bottles of this stuff. And I had like 3 or 4 of these bottles. I mean, I had just bags. I had to put it all like in this plastic, huge storage container to hold it all. And it was so much that I ended up having to get rid of a lot of it because it all expired. I couldn't use all of it. A lot of it, I didn't even need the product. And but they were just handing it out like candy. Oh, here, take it. No, no, thank you. But please, take it. So now it's changed. And the last time I went to a show, it was extremely difficult to get a sample. They write your name down, all the contact information, so they know if you try to go back into the line and get it again, they're not going to give you a sample. And this time they didn't have any of the iPads and stuff out where you put in your email address, whatever. I came in there on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thursday, went through, grabbed the samples. Friday, went through the same places and got the samples. Saturday, did the same thing, So that's kind of, you don't see that today. But, and that's back when I didn't know a lot about, supplement manufacturing until just recently. I didn't realize that samples could be very expensive. On their own, maybe not that much, but you add it up, if you have tens of thousands of people going through there grabbing samples, that's a lot of money. It's not cheap to give those out. But yeah, going back to not providing fuel for the seed of the supplement idea in my mind. From like 2008, I would say probably to like 2011, around there, 2010, 2011. And before I get into this, I have to say, I don't remember my mindset at that time. I assume that my mindset was a certain way, just trying to go back and think about what did I think about at that time. I don't remember it exactly, but this is to the best of my knowledge how my thought process was. So I would say in between 2008 and 2011, the end of 2008, on New Year's Eve is when I was put into the hospital with basically no immune system. So like I said, I'll say that for later, just to give you context. 2008, 2011, I was still 2008 to 2011. I was kind of mumbling there. That's when I was kind of like in recovery, to get over an illness that I've been dealing with since I was 18 years old, so since like 1994, 1995. I would say at that time, I used my illness as an excuse. Oh, I can't do it. I can't physically do it. To give you context, to get out of a car, like, if you get out of a car, what do? You step one leg on the ground, whatever, and you just push yourself out. You use your legs to push yourself out, or you can, like in the Batmobile, the Jeep, which is I no longer have. It has a little bar or whatever on the door. You can use that and just pull yourself out of the car, or pull yourself into the car. I guess it would be push and then pull, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I couldn't do that. I didn't have the strength. I had no leg strength. I couldn't even get out of a car with leg strength. I had to pick my legs up and then shift them over onto the ground. I didn't have the strength, and I'll stand back and do it so you can see my wonderful physique. I don't know if that came over the camera. I guess I'll find out when I edit. But to anybody listening and maybe if we're watching didn't see it, I was just lifting my leg up, just doing a leg lift. I couldn't do that. I didn't have the muscle strength to even lift my leg up on its own. So I had to put my hands under my legs, lift them up, and then set them down, kind of move my hips over and then set them down out of the car. And then I had to use my arms to push myself up because I didn't have the strength to do that. But I use that as an excuse. Well, I can't start a supplement company because I'm too weak. Well, now you listen to the advertisement for the episode. I have the product for sale on my website, www.howardsblend.com. Another plug there. The most physical exertion I've done through this whole entire process is when they shipped me the product and I had to go to the drop box, take the box out of the drop box, which, basically was kind of just setting it down on the ground. It was kind of up on its end. I set it down, took a knife, cut it open, and then there were several smaller boxes inside of it that made up the whole order. And I just took them out one by one and set them in Sam's stroller because I don't have a dolly. And then I pushed that and then put it in storage. That's it. I could have done that. It would have been taken a lot longer, but I could have done that when I was sick. It was an excuse. And then I would say that from 2011 or so to just this last year, when I was finally getting my ass in gear, 2020, it was just fear. It's what it was. And as I described in episode 1, it was that fear is the anticipation of a negative outcome from taking an action. And, the excuse that I gave when I was sick from 2008, 2011, when I got better, I didn't have that excuse anymore. So, and that's all it was, an excuse. And as I've said before, excuses are a disguise for insecurity. And I was insecure about starting it because I was afraid of the possible negative outcome, or I anticipated the negative outcome of the supplement company failing. That's why I didn't start. It's like, oh, well, what if it doesn't work? That's what I always said. Well, I like to do it, and there's a difference there. There's a difference when it's saying I like to do it, but I'm not taking any action on it. But I don't know if this makes any sense. I was afraid of it failing, so then I just said, let me take the instant gratification route, which is my other kind of 1B definition of fear. Let me take the instant gratification route and let me just keep doing what I'm doing, even though I was miserable. Working at jobs I really didn't like. Waking up in the morning, I was kind of, oh, this again. I had no drive. And I was just kind of bouncing around from one thing to the next. I went to technical school, even though I liked IT, but it really wasn't for me. And I went to like 2 classes, and then I never went back. But I still owe the whole tuition, so I had to pay that off. And it's like I was not getting any direction. So it's weird in that, I went to technical school for 2 months, or no, not 2 months. I said 2 classes. That was it. It literally was probably about 2 months, but I went 2 times over that 2 months. And it was like a $5,000 tuition or something for like a year. That's what it was. And that year I could go as many times as I want. And I went, I believe, about 2 times, if I remember right. So now I owe $5,000. And it's funny now that I'm talking about this, I'm trying to put these 2 and 2 together. I was afraid that the supplement company was going to fail. And that's why I didn't want to start it. Right? I was like, oh man, what if it doesn't work? Then all that effort, that money is down the drain. But yet, like I said, I'm just kind of putting these together in my head just right here as I'm recording this. I spent $5,000 to go to a technical school and went 2 times. That $5,000 would have been enough at that time to get the supplement company. I could have had probably a great friggin' product at that time. So I lost the money anyways, but I was doing something that I really wasn't passionate about. And I don't want to make it come across that I didn't do anything. I did take some action, but the term, I believe I coined this. If somebody else has already made this up, then let me know if you hear this. Shoot me their name or whatever their information. I'll give them credit for it. But I believe I coined this. I call it the dabbler's ambition. What I mean by that is I dabbled in the supplements. I would look for some manufacturers for a little bit, and then I wouldn't do it for a year. And I'd say, oh man, I really would like to start a supplement company. Like, I like to do this. I'd like to do that. Well, I'm not putting the energy behind it. I'm not putting the effort into it. I'm not putting the action into it. I'm just telling myself, you know what? I'd like to do is make a supplement company and everything. Just thinking that it's going to magically appear, like Tinkerbell or something like that. It's going to, put her wand or whatever and then make it magically appear. Well, it takes the work to do it. So I had one part of it, well, I'd like to do it, but then you got to put the action behind the intention. So I would dabble in it. I would look for a manufacturer here, try to do some research on ingredients and stuff there, and then take a year off. Tell people, yeah, I'm going to do a supplement company. I'm looking for a manufacturer, when I was really just half-assing it. So that's why I call it the dabbler's ambition. I would see, for example, I talked about Nick Bear and Bear Performance Nutrition. I think he started his YouTube channel like in 2015, I think is when he started it. And I would see his videos, And I'd be like, you know what? He's doing a supplement company. I can do it. Man, I saw this in 2008. So mind you, this is almost 8 years later. And I'm seeing these videos and I'm like, you know what? I could do the supplement company, and I get motivation. But I think I've mentioned this before. If I haven't, the issue I have with motivation is it wanes quickly. It's really good to get motivation before you go work out, because then you can crush through the workout and keep that motivation in mind. But for the long term, in my opinion, like, the motivation won't work. You need something more, you need something deeper than the motivation. To me, it's like inspiration. You need to be inspired to do something. It has to come deep into it. And I didn't have that at that time. I was too busy taking and using the easiest and quickest excuses to divert my plan. I was searching for instant gratification, which is the other definition of fear. It would be easier to talk about it and take no action on it than to actually take action on it. But like I said, it was kind of a weird paradox in that I spent $5,000 to go to technical school and went 2 times when I could use that $5,000 to get the company started. But that's part of life. You learn from the lessons. You learn from the failures, if you want to, even though the failures are bad and people look at failures as bad. I look back at it and I say, well, no, it taught me lessons. I learned lessons from it. Even though it wasn't good, I learned lessons from it. Even though being 80 pounds for 15 years was not good and I had long-lasting health issues from it, it still taught me valuable lessons. So I dabble in it. That's what I'm talking about. It's basically the gist of it is I used excuses to not do anything about it. And when I did do something, I kind of dabbled in it, messed around, and then stopped doing it for another year or two. So no consistent action, or as I say, no persistent, consistent action. So what changed? Why was I messing around and having the dabbler's ambition for 12 years? And then in 2020, finally getting started on it, finally taking action on it. Well, there's a lot of factors and there's a lot of things that go into it. But the main difference was my son. I would say the birth of my son, but my wife's the one that gave birth. I should say becoming a father. Podcast, great example. I think I mentioned this before. I had the idea of doing a podcast in 2016. Same with the supplement company. I did zero. I did jack, for 3 years. 2019, in March of 2019, started the podcast right before my son was born. My wife was pregnant, got the podcast started. Finally got my rear end in gear in 2020 after my son was born. I knew it when he was born. I was like, okay, I got the podcast, but I need to really start getting onto the supplement company. That's when, not long, a few months after he was born, got the LLC created, then started looking for calling manufacturers, started figuring out like, okay, what does it take to make a formula? I don't know when it was, but that's when I had the little video from our old apartment where I'm like, I'm making the supplement company. I'm going to do this, do X, Y, and Z. I don't remember exactly what I said, but that's when I started tinkering with raw ingredients in the kitchen, trying to find like a basic formula that I could use, or ingredients that I wanted to incorporate into the product, or look for a manufacturer that had those ingredients. Calling manufacturers, talking to them giving me advice, is when I talked about in my thoughts on supplement manufacturers. Talking to the salespeople for 30 minutes to an hour and them giving me advice, exchanging emails. I was doing all this stuff trying to get all this information. Looking into building a website. Okay, I want to build a website for the podcast. Use the podcast as a way to push the supplement company, which was the original idea back in 2016, but never did a supplement company. So I kind of went, oh, well, let me just mess around with just say I want to do the podcast, but not do anything about it. So it was having my son, which I put in the blog post. Well, I said having my son, becoming a father. My wife had her son. I became a father. I said, oh, we're having a baby. And man, I was like, you're not having a baby. She's having a baby. You're just the donor. You're going to become the father. She's having the baby. But oh well, rant over. but it was becoming a father. And I learned two things from that. And I put this in the blog post, that life is precious. Life is short. Life is precious. Wonderful, you can have wonderful life. It's a Wonderful Life, good movie. But in a snap of a finger, it can change for the better, for the worse. Life is precious. And then more importantly, I feel, life is short. To put that in context, when my son was born, I could hold him in one hand. Like, his head was like, let's say his head was at the tip of my fingers. And I'm going to describe it when I'm going to show it for the video. But then his feet were like halfway up my forearm. Maybe not even that big. He weighed 6 pounds, almost 6 pounds exactly. I could hold him in one hand. And at that time, I thought, here's all this potential. He has his whole life ahead of him. And I have all this time to try to teach him everything I know, to raise him to be a respectful person, to respect other people, give them the benefit of the doubt, but don't take any shit from anybody. And stand up for people that can't help themselves. And I feel I have all this time. But 2 short years later, now that he's 2, now my perspective is completely flipped. Now I think of it every day as, oh my gosh, 16 years from now, and he's an adult. And you think, well, 16 years is a long time, but to me it's like, it seems so close. In those 2 short years, it changed from I have all this time to now, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time, in a sense. So that was, I think, the catalyst, was the realization that I was becoming a father, and that how good of an example am I going to be to him if I try to explain to him, like, you know what, you need to chase what you want to do. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. You try. If you love something, you need to bust your ass in order to try to make it work. But then he looks at me and says, well, Howard, or he wouldn't say Howard. If he calls me Howard, I'll be pissed. He said, well, Dad, you wanted to be a supplement company owner. You wanted to be in the fitness industry, but you never did it. Why not? And I would be a hypocrite. So I said, I need to go for it. And how good of a father would I be when I'm at a job? I like my job. I like what I do. But I don't have passion for it. It's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. How good are those examples going to be to my son as he's learning from me? I would rather go out there and fail, learn the lessons. It may not work out, but it may. It won't be easy. But then he can look at me and say, it may have not worked out, but my dad gave it 100%. And he busted his butt to try to make it work. And that's something that I look up to him for. That's what the catalyst, like thinking of that, that's when it's like, okay, I got to do this. I'm not getting any younger. I need to do it now. And it's strange because getting married didn't do it. All my close friends know, and I mentioned on here before, it's not the best marriage, but that's part of being married. Who knows what's going to happen, but that's part of being married, is that, you're 2 different people trying to learn to deal with each other. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that wasn't the catalyst. It was almost did it again. Becoming a father is what did it. Because it's easy to get married. Okay? It's hard to be a parent. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's hard to start a supplement company. It's hard to be a parent. Because it takes a lot of effort to try to make it right, for it to succeed. It's not supposed to be easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it successfully. I use that because a lot of people are parents and they really don't need to be. Or they really shouldn't be. But to make it successful, meaning, I guess you mean that you have somebody who, you raise a child who is respectful of people, doesn't break the law, isn't a lawbreaker or anything like that. It takes a lot of work to raise them right and to be a good example, and to have a business, whether it's supplements, whether it's selling clothes, whether it's developing software or whatever it is, it takes a lot of work in it. And so that's what separates the people that talk about it and the people that do it. It's people that do it actually take the action. It's easy to talk. It's harder to put your money where your mouth is. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to say here before I wrap it up. That's pretty much it. I can't really think of anything else. I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Howard's Blend. Howard out. I want to thank you again for listening to this episode of Howard's Blend. If you enjoy the show, if you find value in it, you like what you're hearing, the only thing I ask of you is to share it. Share it, share it, share it. Share it with your friends. Share it with your enemies. Your enemies may become your friends after they listen to the show. Kind of giving out the olive branch. Shaking hands. Digitally now. I guess socially distant. Handshaking. I'm putting my hands together kind of awkwardly. But give them to your friends. Give them to your enemies. Give them to your loved ones. Give them. Why am I saying give them? Send it. Let the people know that in your life of this show. Jesus, it took me forever to even just get that. I could have just said easily. Send it to people you know. All right. Put it on social media, whatever. That's all I ask for providing this information to you. Please share the episode and spread the love, spread the knowledge of Howard's Blend. The show is available Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. Where else? My website, howardsblend.com, where the t-shirts and the supplements are currently available. Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio. I remember them all. I'm going to have to write them down to remember it. That's where the show is currently available, so pretty much wherever you listen to podcasts is going to be available. I have a YouTube channel. It's under Howard's Blend. It has this funky picture of me talking in a microphone with the yellow background. At this time, I've got about 3 videos up there, maybe more. I'm going to start putting like clips, like longer clips of the podcast episodes up. So you can watch me rant and rave and my hands going back and forth all crazy. Arigato, Mr. Roboto. Oh, sorry. Breaking out my sticks there. Love sticks. All right, where was I? I went completely off topic, so now I forgot. Yeah, I listed where you want to listen to it, where you can listen to the show. If you have any questions, comments, cheers, jeers, whatever, send them my way. I love to get feedback on the show, whether it's positive or negative. I love it all. The contact information, as well as where you can find me on social media, is in the description of the show. That's it. I can't think of anything else. So with that said, Howard out from the Batcave studio. Until next time, I'm going to go drink me some Mega Mass 4000. Adios.